In the quiet embrace of the evening, when the weight of the day begins to dissolve into the soft hush of twilight, there exists a threshold, an invisible space where the mind prepares to loosen its grip, and the body gently yields to the call of rest. It is in this sacred stillness that ancient voices begin to whisper once more, carried not by the wind nor spoken by any lips, but resonating through memory, lineage, and timeless wisdom. Tonight, as you settle into the rhythm of your own breath, you are invited to cross into this space, to wander gently into a realm not of fantasy, but of quiet truth, a realm shaped by centuries of Buddhist thought, reflection, and the profound simplicity of story. These stories are not meant to excite or challenge. They do not strive to dazzle or instruct with force. Instead, they arrive like water flowing into the cracks of your thoughts, subtly reshaping the edges of your consciousness. The ancient Buddhist tales you will hear are not bound to one place or time. They are teachings passed down through centuries of monastic tradition, spoken in candlelit halls, whispered during long walks through temple gardens, and woven into the fabric of everyday life. They echo from the foothills of the Himalayas to the bamboo groves of Japan, from the deserts of Tibet to the forests of Southeast Asia. And they carry within them something profound, something eternal, a soft clarity that cuts through the noise of the world, like moonlight cutting through mist. But before we open the door to these stories, let us first prepare the body, the mind, and the heart to receive them. Let us first slow down, because only in stillness can these stories take root. Only in quietness can their meaning bloom. Wherever you are right now, gently bring your attention to the present moment. Notice the way your body feels, perhaps nestled beneath blankets or resting on a cool pillow. Maybe the air around you is still, or maybe there is a fan, a breeze, or the hum of the world outside your window. Whatever surrounds you is exactly what it should be. You are safe, you are here, and you are beginning a journey not outward, but inward. A journey that many have taken before you, not on foot, but through contemplation, presence, and the power of deep listening. Let your breath become your anchor. Feel the inhale, not forced, just natural, and the exhale, soft releasing. Again, inhale and exhale. With each breath, you are gently stepping away from the patterns of thought that hold you in the waking world. There is no need to analyze, to plan, to judge. Not now, not here. All that is required of you is to listen. You may notice thoughts rising and falling like waves. That is perfectly fine. Thoughts are not the enemy. They are simply clouds drifting across the sky of the mind. Acknowledge them and let them pass. There is nothing you need to fix, nothing you need to achieve. In this moment, you are enough, exactly as you are. That understanding, simple and complete, is already one of the deepest truths within Buddhist thought. The idea that peace is not something earned, but something remembered, something always present beneath the layers of striving and self-doubt. Many of the stories you will hear tonight carry this same essence. They were never designed to make you believe in anything. Rather, they invite you to remember what has always been there, a stillness, a truth, a compassion that begins not with others, but with the self. And in this moment, as you lie quietly, perhaps you can already feel it stirring, a soft recognition, a kind of homecoming. There is something powerful about the nighttime. The dark has a way of softening the edges of our inner resistance. During the day, we are pulled in every direction, by duty, by desire, by distraction. But at night, we return to ourselves. We return to the breath. We return to the ancient rhythm of letting go. Buddhist monks know this rhythm well. Their days are filled with simplicity and intention, and their nights are filled with silence, reflection, and deep rest. Not sleep as an escape, but sleep as an offering, a way to reconnect with what truly matters. The tales you will hear are rooted in this way of life. They are not only stories about monks and temples, they are about choice, about awareness, about the subtle shifts that occur when we stop pushing, stop clinging, and simply observe. Each story contains a seed, and whether or not that seed grows tonight is not your responsibility. Your only task is to allow the soil to be soft, and the soil of the soul is always softest in silence. Perhaps you've come here tonight because sleep has been elusive. Perhaps your mind has been tangled in worry, replaying moments from the day, or rehearsing those of tomorrow. You are not alone in this. In fact, the human tendency to grasp at thought, to ruminate, to fear, is something the Buddha himself taught about over 2,500 years ago. He called it dukkha, the suffering that comes not just from pain, but from attachment to things beyond our control. These stories are not meant to fix your suffering. They simply illuminate a path, one that leads not to perfect peace, but to presence. And that is enough. As you continue to breathe, slowly, steadily, you may notice your body growing heavier, not tired, exactly, just at ease. The weight of your limbs, the softness of your hands, the quiet beat of your heart, these are the rhythms that connect you to something far older than yourself. To the millions who have breathed this same breath, who have listened to these same stories, who have found within them, not just wisdom, but comfort. And that too is the gift of Buddhist stories. They do not require belief. They do not demand conversion. They simply offer a mirror, a chance to see yourself not as broken or restless, but as human, as one part of a vast and compassionate unfolding. Tonight, we will walk slowly through several stories. Each one is a door. You may choose to walk through it, or simply sit before it and watch. There is no right way to listen. There is no right way to understand. The wisdom in these tales is like water. It meets you where you are. If you are exhausted, it refreshes. If you are anxious, it soothes. If you are searching, it holds up a lantern, not to show you the destination, but to show you that the path was always beneath your feet. This first part of our journey is about arriving. It is not about the story itself, but about the listening. It is about preparing the field of awareness, so that when the story does begin, you are not merely hearing with your ears, but listening with your heart. Let the breath guide you again, in out, each breath washing away the noise, the tension, the expectation. In this quiet, you may begin to notice something remarkable, a sense of being watched over, not by anything external, but by a deeper part of yourself, the part that knows how to rest, how to heal, how to let go. It is the part that recognizes the truths in these stories, not as foreign or philosophical, but as familiar, as something you already knew, long before you could put it into words. As we stand at the threshold of the first story, I invite you to let go of the idea that you need to understand it. Let it wash over you. Let it lull you into a softer state. These stories are not puzzles to be solved. They are meditations to be experienced. They are lullabies for the soul. You are no longer in the world of doing. You are in the world of being. There is nothing left to do, no decision left to make. Only the breath, only the story, only the now. And so, as you continue to settle, as the breath slows and the body loosens, allow your awareness to drift, not away, but deeper. You are not falling asleep. You are returning to a deeper form of wakefulness, the kind of wakefulness that recognizes the rustling of leaves, the rhythm of waves, the hush of candlelight, not as background noise, but as part of a grand symphony of life. And in that symphony, your stillness is not absence, it is harmony. There is a reason these stories have endured for centuries. They speak to something universal, not a religion, not a culture, but a need. The need to feel that our struggles are seen, that our suffering is shared, that our lives, however ordinary, are part of something vast and mysterious. To sleep deeply is to surrender to this mystery. It is to allow the stories of the day to fall away, and the deeper stories, the ones that live in silence, to emerge. And so, breathe once more. Let your body rest. Let your mind float. Let your heart remain open. The stories are waiting, not far away, not long ago, but here, in the stillness between thoughts, in the space between breaths. You are ready. The journey has already begun. As the mind begins to rest in stillness, and the body settles into the familiar embrace of the night, we turn now toward the heart of our path. Before the stories unfold, before the ancient voices of compassion and clarity begin their soft chant through the corridors of your awareness, there is something essential to understand, not intellectually, but quietly, intimately, like a recognition that arises in the chest, long before it is named by the tongue. Why stories? Why does the human mind, even in its most restless states, reach for narratives? There is an old saying in many monastic traditions, that the shortest distance between truth and the human soul is a story. It is not logic that softens the heart. It is not data or doctrine that opens the door. It is the gentle unfolding of a tale, with characters, with choice, with subtle transformation, that speaks to the parts of us too deep for instruction. The Buddhist stories you will hear tonight are ancient, but they are not relics. They live, they breathe, and they wait, not on shelves, but in the moments between thoughts, passed not by ink alone, but through breath, memory, and the quiet hush of teachers speaking to disciples, beneath the shade of trees, on stone steps, in the calm of mountain caves. These stories were not meant to be rushed. They were never shouted or dramatized. They were never sold or packaged. They were shared, whispered, gifted, like a bowl of rice handed to someone hungry, not as a lesson, but as nourishment. That is how we will receive them here. But before you listen with your ears, it is important to listen with your life. That is to open the space within you that welcomes something new, not to conquer or contain, but to witness. Just as monks bow before entering a meditation hall, not because the hall demands it, but because the act of bowing prepares the heart, we too prepare. To do that, we must understand a simple truth. These stories are not about entertainment. They are not here to distract you from your life. They are here to lead you deeper into it. And paradoxically, the deeper you go into yourself, the more fully you are released from the grip of your own thoughts. You come to rest. You come to breathe. And only then, only when you are no longer trying to sleep, does sleep arrive like a bird landing softly on an open palm. In the Buddhist tradition, stories are part of what is called upaya, skillful means. That is, the Buddha and his disciples knew that truth, in its rawest form, is difficult to receive. Like trying to drink the ocean, it overwhelms. But in a story, in the gentle shape of a parable, the truth arrives not as flood, but as stream. It moves around your resistance. It enters gently, almost unnoticed, and when it reaches the root, something in you changes, not because you were convinced, but because you remembered. In this remembering, there is no need for argument. There is no need for belief. There is only recognition, like the way a child, even in a foreign country, still knows how to laugh. The stories you will hear tonight speak that language, the language of what cannot be taught, only felt, the language of the soul, before it was tangled in definitions. And so, you may ask again, What makes these stories Buddhist? It is not that they use the name of the Buddha. It is not that they take place in temples or among monks. It is that they carry within them a certain view of reality, one where all things are impermanent, all beings are connected, and all suffering can be transformed, not by force, but by awareness. In Buddhist philosophy, sleep is not separate from waking. It is part of a cycle, a rhythm, a dance between effort and ease, between knowing and not knowing. And just as the breath rises and falls, just as day turns to night without strain, so too does the mind drift from thought to story, from story to silence, from silence to sleep. This is not escapism. This is not retreat. This is return. Return to a simpler rhythm, a deeper pulse, a place beyond fear, beyond guilt, beyond the endless tug of wanting and avoiding. In this space, stories do not demand, they invite. They do not prescribe, they reflect. As you rest now, perhaps with eyes closed or gaze softened, notice what arises in the space around you. Perhaps it is the sound of distant traffic, perhaps the ticking of a clock, or the gentle creak of your own breath moving through your chest. All of it is welcome, none of it is a distraction. In Buddhist meditation, the world is not an obstacle, it is a field of practice, a garden, not a wall. What you hear is part of the story, just as your breath is part of the prayer. And what of the mind? What if it wanders? What if it clings, resists, replays? This too is part of the story. In the teachings of the Buddha, the mind is not an enemy to be conquered. It is a traveler, a monkey, some say, swinging from thought to thought. And the goal is not to stop the monkey, but to gently hold space while it tires itself out. Eventually, even the wildest thought will settle, not through punishment, but through kindness. The same kindness that lives in the stories you are about to hear. There is a phrase often used in Buddhist storytelling: listen with the whole body. This means not only with your ears, but with your breath, with your skin, with your heart. The stories do not seek to explain, but to shift, to move something within you that no explanation ever could. And so, tonight, as the night grows deeper, and your body softens more fully into rest, you are not simply preparing for sleep, you are preparing to receive, to open yourself, without defense, to the wisdom of a path older than empires, quieter than empires, and infinitely more enduring. These stories are not promises, they are possibilities, possibilities of seeing differently, of feeling differently, of remembering that the ground beneath your feet has always held you, that the space between your thoughts is vast and kind, that there is nothing, in this moment, that you must fix. Just imagine a monk walking barefoot through a forest, leaves crunching underfoot, pausing not to speak, but to listen. That is the posture of tonight. You are the monk, this space is your forest. And what you are listening for is already within you. You need not chase anything tonight, not insight, not answers, not sleep. The very act of listening, of resting in the story without needing to grasp it, is enough. This is the wisdom of the Dharma. That truth arises not through control, but through surrender. That peace is not a place, but a way of seeing. That sleep, true deep, nourishing sleep, does not come when we demand it, but when we no longer need it to prove anything. And so you lie here, breathing, listening, becoming soft, becoming wide, like a bowl waiting to be filled, not by knowledge, but by presence. That is what makes these stories so powerful. They are not mere entertainment. They are not decoration. They are transmissions, echoes of something vast, ancient, and intimate. Tonight you join a lineage, not of monks or scholars, or saints, but of listeners, those who in the quiet of night choose not to escape the world, but to hear it more clearly, to feel it more deeply, to meet it, not with reaction, but with receptivity. You are not alone in this listening. Across oceans and centuries, there are others, lying just like you, breathing just like you, listening just like you, feeling the same threads of story weave into the quiet fabric of their minds. You are not alone, and soon, as you begin to hear the first tale, you may not even realize where the story ends and your dreaming begins. That is the nature of deep rest. That is the blessing of ancient stories. They hold you when your own thoughts cannot. They cradle you, not to teach you something new, but to remind you what you've always known, that you are safe, that you are loved, and that you are part of a great unfolding, one breath, one story, one moment at a time. Now, let your breath fall gently again. The story is coming, and you are ready. As the stillness deepens and your breath becomes more rhythmic, the outer world recedes further into the background. The edges of time begin to blur, and with every passing moment, the veil between your conscious awareness and the realm of inner peace thins just a little more. It is here, in this tender space between waking and dreaming, that something ancient begins to stir, not in the form of memory, not yet in story, but in sensation, a sense that something is approaching, not with urgency, but with patience, with love, with the calm that only comes from timelessness. Before we open the pages of the first Buddhist story, we continue now by anchoring ourselves even more deeply into the heart of presence. This is not an act of escape. It is not avoidance of the world. It is the return to a truth that the world has for a while asked us to forget, that rest is sacred, and that stillness is not emptiness, but fullness in its quietest form. You are preparing yourself to listen not just to words, but to wisdom, and the quality of that listening is what will shape the experience that follows. In Buddhist practice, the readiness of the mind is as important as the teaching itself. A clouded mind, agitated and cluttered, cannot receive subtle truth, just as a pond stirred by wind cannot reflect the moon. So tonight we become the still pond. We listen not to chase meaning, but to allow meaning to find us. To assist with this, we let the body soften even further. Begin now by bringing awareness to your feet. Let go of any tension in the toes, the arches, the heels. Allow the weight of your legs to sink into the bed or floor beneath you, as if gravity were whispering a lullaby through your muscles. Let the knees unlock, the thighs rest. No effort is needed here. Effort has done its part today. You have arrived at the part of the day where effort bows and exits the stage. Draw your attention now to your hands. Uncurl the fingers if they are clenched. Feel their warmth, their quiet presence. Let the arms grow heavy, relaxed. The shoulders, so often tight with invisible burdens, are now given permission to fall, to release, to be held not by tension, but by the earth itself. Your breath is a teacher now, gentle, unassuming, and deeply wise. Allow each breath to carry you a little deeper inward. With every inhale, imagine you are drawing in calm. With every exhale, imagine you are releasing everything you do not need. Thoughts, worries, unfinished stories from the day. They may still arise, but you no longer have to follow them. You are simply the sky, and they are clouds that will drift on. And what of the heart? The heart is the keeper of these stories, even before they are told. The heart recognizes ancient truths not because it has learned them, but because it remembers them. Like a bell struck softly in a quiet temple, the echo of these stories will not sound from your ears, but from deep within the chest, a soft pulse of recognition, a gentle yes beneath all the noise. This preparation of the heart is subtle. It does not come from force, it comes from allowance. You are not asking the heart to open, you are simply letting it be seen, letting it exhale, letting it rest from its long duty of trying to protect you. There is nothing to defend against here. These stories are not sharp, they are not cruel, they are not tests, they are hands held out in the dark, offering warmth, offering company, offering the still rhythm of compassion. To receive them, it helps to remember, every story is both a path and a mirror. A path, because it takes us somewhere new. A mirror, because even as we walk into unfamiliar tales, we see ourselves reflected in the travelers. You may find yourself tonight in the stillness of a monk who refuses to speak. You may find yourself in the fear of a traveler cornered by wild animals, or in the humility of a student pouring too much tea. But wherever you find yourself, know that you are welcome there. You do not need to fix the story. You do not need to explain it. You only need to allow it to unfold. And in this unfolding, healing begins, not through effort, but through trust. In Buddhist meditation, this trust is called siddha, not blind faith, but a quiet confidence that what is real will remain, and what is not will dissolve on its own. You do not need to understand everything tonight. In fact, the most powerful moments may be the ones you cannot explain. A sudden stillness, a sense of being accompanied, a memory rising from nowhere and passing without pain. These are signs not of distraction, but of deep listening. As you continue to breathe, notice now the space around your thoughts, not the thoughts themselves, but the silence in which they appear. That silence is where these stories will land, not on the surface of the mind, but deep within the lake of your being. You may wonder if you're doing this right. That too is a thought. Let it go. There is no right. There is only here. There is only this breath, this moment, this openness. In Buddhist thought, the concept of non-grasping is key. To listen without trying to hold, to rest without trying to trap sleep, to hear a story not to analyze it, but to let it bloom on its own, like a flower opening not because you pulled it open, but because the sun warmed it enough to trust the day. That is what we are doing now, warming the soil, trusting the light. This quiet preparation, this moment of receptivity, is itself a kind of meditation, a practice of letting go, a practice of arriving. And what you are arriving at is not some perfect state of stillness. What you are arriving at is your own presence, gentle, imperfect and holy enough. As your breath continues, imagine that each inhale draws the story closer, not in sound yet, not in words, but in presence. The story is approaching. It has seen your light, it has felt your stillness, and it is coming not to entertain, but to sit beside you. Let your mind become like the forest path, where a story walks quietly. Barefoot, let your heart be the garden where it may rest. You are not the listener, and the story something outside of you. You are the story's home, the place it has waited to return to. When the Buddha first began to teach, he did not begin with doctrines or rules. He began with stories, stories of farmers and kings, of animals and spirits, of choices made in quiet, and the ripples that followed. He knew that the human mind, especially when weary, cannot always grasp what the heart already knows, but through story, the heart leads, the mind follows, and together they understand. This is where you are now, not waiting, but welcoming, not chasing sleep, but becoming the kind of place sleep longs to visit. In this final breath before the first tale, let us remember the purpose, not to escape, not to forget, but to become soft enough, open enough, quiet enough, that the ancient wisdom of these stories may land where it always belonged, not in books or temples, but within you. Let yourself go, let your thoughts rest, let your heart remain open. The story is here, it is ready, and so are you. There is a moment, just before a story begins, that is unlike any other. It is neither silence nor speech. It is a breath held between the past and what is about to be revealed. It is the space where intention meets possibility, where the world pauses just long enough for the ancient to re-enter the present. You are in that moment now, and if you listen not only with your ears, but with the spaces between your thoughts, you may sense it too, that subtle shift. Not loud, not bright, but unmistakable. The hush before a seed opens, the stillness before dawn, the quiet invitation to step into something both familiar and sacred. We are not rushing. There is no need. In Buddhist tradition, haste is considered a form of violence against the self, against wisdom, against the very rhythm of life. What grows does not grow faster because we watch it. What heals does not heal deeper because we command it. So too with these stories. They cannot be forced, they can only be welcomed. And so we continue welcoming. Like monks sweeping the temple floor before chanting begins, we clear the ground of distraction. We do not fight thoughts, we bow to them. We bow to their presence, and then we let them pass, like clouds through the blue sky of the mind. A story, after all, does not land in a clenched fist, it lands in an open palm. Let the body relax even further now. Perhaps you hadn't noticed the slight tension still held in the jaw, the brow, the neck. No need to correct it, just become aware. Awareness in this space is transformation. Simply noticing softens, and what softens allows. The breath continues, soft, steady, effortless now. You are no longer trying to relax, you are simply remembering how. Just as water does not try to be wet, you do not need to try to be still. Stillness is not something you achieve, it is something you uncover. And what you uncover tonight is more than rest, more than sleep. It is an ancient way of seeing. These stories, these Buddhist parables, do not speak to who you pretend to be. They speak to who you already are, beneath the noise, beneath the history, beneath the roles you've carried so long, you've forgotten. They can be set down. The stories you are about to receive were told not to the powerful or the wise, but to those willing to listen. Children, elders, wanderers, farmers, all of them, at some point, sat where you are now, listening not to be entertained, but to be realigned, not to be thrilled, but to be reminded that life is simple, that pain is shared, that peace is possible, not through effort, but through perception. In Buddhist philosophy, perception is everything. What we see, how we see it, and whether we cling to what we see, these are the ingredients of our suffering, or our freedom. The stories are mirrors polished, not with force, but with time. And tonight, they will reflect, not a better version of you, but a truer one, a quieter one, a self beyond striving. As your breath settles deeper, imagine the body as a field, not a field to be tilled or harvested, but one that lies fallow under the stars, resting, restoring, simply being. No pressure, no progress, just presence. That field is who you are now. The voice you are hearing, my voice, is not the story, it is the bridge. The story comes, not from outside you, but from within you. I am simply helping you remember the path toward it. You may have begun this journey tonight with questions, or worries, or hopes. Let them fall. Let them become as distant as footsteps on a road already walked. You are no longer walking. You are arriving. This is the sacred pause between the heartbeat and the echo. In the Buddhist temples of the East, there is a practice of sitting in silence before the morning bell, a silence so deep that the world feels reborn when the bell finally rings. You are in that silence now, and the bell, the first note of the first story, is approaching. But even here, even this waiting, is holy, because what you are doing is rare. In a world filled with noise, you have chosen quiet. In a world demanding action, you have chosen rest. In a world obsessed with speaking, you have chosen to listen. This alone is transformation, and in that choice, you align yourself with something much older than you. A river of seekers, and dreamers, and wanderers, who have all, in their own way, turned inward, not to escape life, but to meet it fully. That is what these stories offer. Not distraction, but direction. Not escape, but return. Return to a part of you untouched by time. A part of you still wild, still kind, still curious. The stories may feature monks or animals, gods or ghosts, but beneath their surfaces, they are always about the same thing. You, how you see, how you suffer, how you awaken, and yes, how you sleep. Because in sleep too there is awakening, not the sharp awakening of alarms and obligations, but the soft awakening of truths that rise when the mind is no longer defending itself. In the hours ahead, as your breathing slows and the stories begin to unfold, your mind may drift. It may wander into dream. This is not failure. This is the design. The stories do not ask you to stay awake for them. They simply ask to be heard, even if only by the part of you that listens while the rest of you sleeps. There is a phrase in the teachings of the Zen tradition: the gate of peace has no door. Those who enter do so by listening. Tonight, that is what you are doing. Entering the gateless gate, not to arrive anywhere, but to remember that you never left. In this remembering there is nothing more to prepare. Nothing more to prove, nothing more to release. You have done it. You have arrived at the edge of the story, and like the final step before entering a temple, all that remains is the bow. A bow not to the story, not to me, but to yourself, to the part of you that said yes to this moment, that said yes to listening, that said yes to letting go. In the final moments of this sacred stillness, before the first words of the first tale arise, take one more breath. Not because you must, but because it is a gift. A breath given to yourself, by yourself. A gesture of kindness, of arrival, of readiness. And now, in the hush of this breath you will feel it, the edge of the first story approaching, soft as moonlight, gentle as the tide. It is time, not to do, but to receive. The story is near, and you are open. There is a quiet moment, just before a story opens, when the soul recognizes what the mind has not yet named. You feel it not as thought, but as a kind of shift, a change in the temperature of your attention, a tremble in the stillness, as if something ancient is walking toward you, not with footsteps but with presence. And it is what is coming is not merely a tale, it is a vessel, a form that will carry something timeless across the sea of your awareness. And like a ship arriving at night, it carries no noise, no fanfare, only purpose, only truth. This is the moment of crossing. Everything that has come before, your breath, your body, your listening, has led you here, and what waits on the other side is not instruction but invitation. The invitation to allow the story to unfold not as information but as experience. To let it soak into your senses, your memory, your breath itself. In the monasteries of the Himalayan regions, there is a word whispered before a master begins to share a tale. The word is not a command. It is not even a word with sharp meaning. It is a sound, a kind of vocal bowing. It is the sound of reverence, not for the story, but for the space the story will enter. You are now that space. You are no longer the listener watching a story approach. You are the vessel into which it will be poured. Let the body remain heavy. Let the thoughts pass like mist in a valley. Let your breath come and go without needing your help. All of that is taken care of. Now, you have entered a new kind of listening, one that does not strain to hear but receives without resistance, and as this listening deepens, the atmosphere begins to change. Not around you, within you. The inner landscape shifts. The soil of the mind loosens. The light within begins to dim, not into darkness, but into clarity. This is what the ancient teachers called the twilight of insight, a moment when the boundaries between thought and knowing, between self and story, begin to dissolve. You are not merely lying still. You are opening. You are not merely hearing. You are remembering. And now, the story begins to stir. Not in words, not yet, but in form. The story has waited centuries for this moment. Not to be preserved, but to be lived again, in you. Through you, you may feel your mind reaching to anticipate. What will the story be? Who will it involve? What lesson does it hold? Let those questions fall. Let them drift like petals on a stream. The story does not demand your analysis. It seeks your presence, and presence has already been given. You have already said yes. The first story to arrive tonight is quiet. It does not knock. It enters like incense through a half-opened door. Its shape is simple. Its tone is soft, and yet its truth runs deep enough to reach the roots of your fatigue, the corners of your longing, the layers of thought that kept you awake on nights like this. It begins, as all true stories do, not with a bang, but with breath. It begins with stillness, and from that stillness, it begins to unfold. But even now, in these final seconds before the first word is spoken, pause, because this moment, this breath, is sacred. This is the last breath you will take before the story begins. It is the final thread between preparation and presence. And as you breathe it in, know that you are not alone. Across this planet, and across time itself, others have sat where you are. Others have listened. Others have let go. Others have been carried by this same current of story. You are part of a lineage now, not of belief, but of surrender. Not of ideology, but of openness. Not of answers, but of listening. And in that lineage, you are welcome. The monks say that the story knows its way better than the teller does. So now, I step aside, not in voice, but in will. I become simply a conduit. And what moves through me is not mine. It is older than me. It is older than language. It is the breath of the Dharma, wearing the clothes of story, and it is ready. You are ready. And the silence breaks. In a quiet valley tucked between ancient hills, there once stood a monastery so old that even the trees bowed in reverence to its silence. The roofs were covered in weathered tiles, the walls traced with moss like veins of memory. It was a place where time slowed not because of any enchantment, but because of choice. because the people within those walls had long ago decided that rushing through life only leads one away from it. At the edge of this monastery, beside a bamboo grove that swayed like breath, lived a monk who had not spoken in nearly a decade. No one could remember the sound of his voice, not the other monks, not the villagers who brought rice and incense as offerings, not even the sparrows who nested beneath the monastery's eaves. He had not taken a vow of silence. No, his silence was not a rule, it was a realization. The story goes that when this monk was a young novice, he had once argued with great force, debated with passion, and spoken often. He was intelligent, and he knew it. He won every conversation, every debate, every correction. But after years of studying the sutras, years of rising before the sun, and kneeling long after it fell, something in him began to shift, not quickly, not loudly, like water reshaping stone. One morning, while sweeping fallen leaves from the temple courtyard, he paused. A single yellow leaf floated down and landed in the center of his broom. He watched it tremble in the breeze, and in that moment, he felt not understood, but felt that every word he had spoken had pushed the world away. He didn't speak again after that. The elder monks asked nothing of him. The abbot simply bowed, and from that day on, the young monk's presence changed. He still performed every duty, still rose before dawn, still sat in meditation, but now, his silence filled the monastery like perfume from a hidden flower. It didn't shout, it stayed. Visitors came, as they always did, seeking wisdom, healing, or miracles. Some came from distant cities, their shoes clean but their hearts dusted with longing. Others came from nearby fields, weathered and bowed by life, and inevitably, they would hear of the silent monk. They would ask to see him, and when permitted, they would sit across from him beneath the banyan tree, where he now spent his mornings, tending to small stone statues worn smooth by wind. They would talk, tell him their troubles, their fears, their doubts, their joys, their secrets, and the monk would listen, not like a wall listens, not like a notebook listens, but like the earth listens, absorbing without judging, receiving without resistance. Sometimes they would ask questions, deep, aching questions, and the monk would only look at them, not with indifference, but with the kind of gaze that said, "You already know." Some visitors grew frustrated. Why won't he speak? They asked the others. Is he too proud, too holy, too strange? But those who stayed long enough to exhaust the need for words, long enough to notice the wind, long enough to hear their own breathing, found something else. They found that in the monk's silence, their questions became clearer, their minds less noisy, their hearts less brittle. One man, a merchant who had lost everything in a fire, came to the monastery with tears in his eyes and anger in his voice. He demanded to know why life had punished him, why gods remained silent while people suffered. He shouted, he wept, he accused, and through it all the monk sat, his face like a still pond. The merchant waited for an answer. Minutes passed, then an hour, then two, and finally, exhausted, he fell asleep right there in the dust. When he woke, the monk was gone. In his place was a small bowl of water and a single plum blossom floating on the surface. The merchant stared at it. At first it meant nothing, then something stirred. The fire that had taken his shop had also taken his voice. But here, in this gesture, a bowl, a blossom, he saw not pity, but presence, not answers but attention. He bowed low, and when he returned home, he did not rebuild his shop. He opened a tea house, and above the door he carved the shape of a single petal. Another visitor, A woman with eyes like storms came in search of healing. She had lost her son. Years had passed, but her grief had not. She carried it like a stone inside her chest. She wanted a chant, a prayer, a ritual, something to lift the weight. She sat with the monk. She told him her story. She asked what to do. He said nothing. The wind moved through the trees. A bell chimed in the distance, and the woman, frustrated, asked again, louder. Still nothing. But as she sat there, anger curling beneath her grief, a sound emerged, her own breath, and in the silence, she realized how long it had been since she heard it, since she allowed herself to be alive, not just broken. She began to cry, not the sharp cry of anguish, but the slow cry of surrender. And when she opened her eyes, the monk was holding a candle, not lit, just held. And somehow, that gesture was enough. She returned home, not healed, but willing. And that willingness grew into peace. Over the years, the silent monk became a myth. Children whispered about him, as if he were a ghost or a sage. Pilgrims left gifts at the base of his tree, and still he did not speak. But one day, many years later, the monk grew ill. The abbot came to see him, and the two sat for hours, wordless. When the monk's breath grew shallow, and his chest rose like wind over tired hills, the abbot leaned close and whispered, "Is there anything you wish to say?" The monk looked at him, and with the softest smile, he shook his head. He passed in the early light, as birds began to sing. The monastery held a silent vigil, and in the courtyard where he once swept leaves, the wind carried them into soft spirals, as if dancing in gratitude. Later the abbot was asked, "Why do you think he never spoke?" The abbot replied, "Because he saw what words could not hold." And the lesson, like the silence, remained. Even now, in temples and gardens, the story of the silent monk is told, not with drama, not with urgency, but with quiet. Because the story itself is not about silence, it is silence. And that silence, once heard, never truly leaves. You may hear it now, in the pause between breaths, in the hush after this sentence, in the space that has opened in your heart. That silence is not empty, it is full. Full of you, full of all you've carried, full of all you are ready to release. And as you rest here now, maybe something in you understands, not with thought, but with knowing, that you do not always need the answer. You do not always need the words. Sometimes, the presence is enough. Sometimes, listening is enough. Sometimes, being is enough. And so you breathe, and so you rest, and so the story continues, in you, high in the folds of a mountain path, where the air grows thin and the earth sharpens into stone. A man once found himself caught between two ends of the same fear. Behind him, a tiger. Ahead of him, a cliff. He had not expected this when he began his journey at dawn. He had risen early, gathered his small pack, and set out with the kind of confidence that only clarity of purpose can bring. His intention was simple: to walk the pilgrimage trail, to clear his mind, to leave behind the noise of the village, and return with some quiet woven into his being. But the world does not always reward our intentions with safety, and so it was that halfway through a narrow bend in the trail, he heard it. The low growl of hunger, of warning, of presence. He turned, and there, rising from the forest's edge, was the tiger. Not mythical, not metaphorical, real, vast. Muscles like coiled ropes beneath fur that shimmered even in shadow. Its eyes fixed on him, not with malice, but with inevitability. He ran. There was no time for breath, no room for thought, only motion, forward, fast. The path was jagged, broken in places by erosion, and it wound itself dangerously close to the edge of the cliffside. Still he ran, not to escape the tiger, but because anything felt better than standing still. And then the trail ended, or rather, it dropped abruptly, without mercy, into a gorge so deep that the bottom was lost to mist. He did not stop to calculate. He jumped, but he did not fall. By instinct, or luck, or some force that watches over the frightened, he grabbed onto a root that jutted from the cliff wall. His body swung, scraped against the rock, and settled there, dangling, arms trembling, breath shattered. The root held, but for how long he could not know. Above him he heard the tiger. Its roar echoed down the cliff like thunder through a tunnel. The beast did not try to climb. It simply waited, pacing at the edge, patient. Below him, silence, and then a rustling. The man looked down. From the base of the cliff far below, another sound answered the tigers above. In the shadows beneath the root, 2 more tigers appeared, not climbing, just waiting. Their orange stripes flickered in the scattered light. Their eyes did not blink. And so he hung there, above death, below death, and between. This root, this moment, this impossible pause. The man did not cry out. He did not call for help. There was no one to hear, only the wind, and the root, and the roar of inevitability. He closed his eyes, and in that closing something strange occurred. Not peace, not surrender, but a widening. He became aware viscerally of every point of contact between his skin and the bark, of the way his toes curled in his sandals, of the slight sting of sweat in his eyes, of the smell of moss and stone. And then he saw it, growing from the cliff face, just to the side of his left hand, a wild strawberry, small, red, perfect. He stared at it for a moment, blinking. It did not belong here. It should not have grown here. And yet, there it was, alive, unconcerned, unaware of tigers or cliffs or fear. He reached for it. The movement was small, careful, measured. He plucked the berry between his fingers, brought it to his lips, and ate. And in that bite, everything stopped. The fear did not disappear. The tigers did not vanish. But in the taste, sweet, sun-warmed, delicate, he found something deeper than safety. He found presence. The world did not promise to save him, but for that moment, the world gave him the fullness of life. He chewed, he swallowed, he smiled. The story ends here, or perhaps it begins, because what happened next, whether the root gave way, whether the tigers leapt, whether some miracle intervened, is never told. It is not the point. The point is the strawberry, the moment, the bite, and what it reveals. In Buddhist teaching, the story is not one of survival. It is one of awareness, of presence in the face of fear, of sweetness in the shadow of death. It is not meant to teach that danger can be escaped. It is meant to show that even in the heart of danger, life continues to offer itself. The man did not eat the strawberry because he believed it would save him. He ate it because it was there, because it was real, because in a world slipping away from him on all sides, here was one thing he could taste. The lesson is not that he was brave. The lesson is that he was awake, truly awake, to the moment, to the miracle of something so small. In your own life, you may know these cliffs. You may have heard the roar of your own tigers, loss, failure, illness, uncertainty. You may have found yourself hanging, not knowing whether the thing you're holding will hold. And still the world offers strawberries, a laugh you didn't expect, a breath that steadies, a hand that touches yours without needing a reason, a sky that opens between buildings, the sound of your own heart still beating, even when everything else feels broken. This story reminds us that we cannot control the cliffs, We cannot banish the tigers, but we can notice the strawberry. We can taste it. We can let it be real, even in the shadow of what we fear, because sometimes that moment of noticing is the only freedom we get, and sometimes it is enough. So as you lie here now, breathing slowly, surrounded by your own thoughts, your own unknowns, consider this. There may be things in your life that feel like tigers, but there are also strawberries, and you can choose, even now, to taste them, not to forget the fear, but to remember the sweetness, to let it live on your tongue, however briefly, to let it remind you this moment is still alive, you are still alive, and that in itself is a miracle. The story has ended, the silence returns, and in that silence something remains, not the tiger, not the fall, but the taste, the presence, the knowing. And as you rest now, that knowing becomes breath, becomes stillness, becomes you. There was once a student who had traveled far, not just in miles, but in desire. He had studied with many teachers, read many scrolls, and sat through many long nights of contemplation, his heart swelling with the hunger to understand. He had learned about virtue and emptiness, about suffering and freedom, about the countless teachings whispered across centuries. His mind was full, overflowing, even, and yet he was not at peace. That is why he came to the mountain. Atop the mountain was said to live a master, a teacher of great clarity, a man who had once spoken before emperors, and who had, in the later seasons of his life, withdrawn into quiet, accepting only the occasional seeker. The student climbed for days, through forests where the leaves whispered secrets, across stone paths traced by generations of footsteps. He carried with him books, questions, interpretations. He believed he was ready. When he reached the gate of the master's home, he bowed, not just out of respect, but out of anticipation. He believed that this meeting would finally complete the great puzzle of his mind. The master received him, not with ceremony, not with grand insight, but with tea. They sat in silence for a time. The wind moved gently through the paper screens. The student fidgeted, anxious to begin, but unsure of the right words. Finally he spoke. He introduced himself, listing the teachings he had studied, the schools of thought he had visited, the sacred texts he had memorized. He spoke of his questions, deep, intricate, multi-layered, and of his theories. He asked for guidance, clarification, validation. The master said nothing. Instead, he picked up the teapot, which had been warming beside a small coal fire. He lifted the cup in front of the student, and he began to pour. The tea flowed gently, curling into the empty cup with quiet grace. Then the cup filled, but the master did not stop. The tea rose to the brim. Still he poured. A drop fell, then another. The tea spilled over the edge, pooling on the tray, then down onto the wooden floor. The student watched, alarmed, confused, uncertain whether to speak. But when the tea reached his robe, warm against his folded legs, he finally cried out, "Stop! Can't you see the cup is full?" The master paused. He looked at the student. Then softly, he said, "Exactly." And that was the lesson. He set down the pot, and silence returned. But the silence was different now. The student's breath had caught. His thoughts, once neatly stacked, had begun to unravel. He wanted to explain, to justify, to recover the dignity of his overflowing mind. But he didn't, because something deeper than logic had been touched. He looked at the cup, still trembling, still spilling, and he saw himself, full of opinions, full of certainty, full of conclusions, too full for truth to enter. And in that moment, he understood what no book had taught him, that wisdom does not fill the cup, it empties it. Only an empty cup can receive tea. Only an empty mind can receive truth. Only an empty heart can truly love. The master never spoke again that day. There was no lecture, no correction, no formal teaching, only tea, and a silence that echoed louder than any words the student had ever heard. He stayed for weeks, but not to study, to listen, to unlearn, to pour out. And day by day, as the leaves fell and the air grew colder, the student began to notice things he had never seen before. The sound of boiling water, the steam that curled from a cup, the way the master's hands moved with care, but not control. And slowly, the questions faded, not because they were answered, but because they were no longer needed. When the student finally left the mountain, he carried no new text, no secret mantra, no sacred scroll, only a simple clay cup, and it was empty. But in that emptiness, there was space for everything. This story, like the cup, is not meant to be held too tightly. Its purpose is not to impress or to instruct, but to point, to remind that your own mind, busy, beautiful, burdened, may be full too, full of noise, full of memory, full of trying, and there is nothing wrong with that. But if you find yourself restless, if you find yourself seeking, if you find that no matter how much you learn, something still aches, then maybe the invitation is not to learn more. Maybe the invitation is to let go, to set something down, to pour something out, not forever, not completely, just enough to make space, for breath, for wonder, for quiet, and yes, for tea. As you rest here now, this story may not fill you. That is not its task. It may leave you with silence, with space, and perhaps that is exactly the point. You do not need to understand everything tonight. You do not need to fix the story of your life. You only need to notice what in you is full, and what in you is ready to be emptied. Perhaps that is where sleep begins, not in trying, but in releasing, not in holding on, but in letting spill, one drop at a time, until there is nothing left but stillness, and the quiet warmth of the next breath, waiting. In a small village wrapped in fog and memory, there lived an old man, known simply as the Lantern Keeper. His house stood on the edge of a long winding road that disappeared into a forest older than any name it was given. This road, for generations, had been used by travelers, merchants, wanderers, monks, and those with burdens too heavy to carry in the light of day. They came not to see the Lantern Keeper, but to pass by his house, and yet he became part of their journey, like a sign, like a shadow, like a breath they did not realize they were holding. Each evening, as the sun dipped behind the hills and the sky bled into shades of silence, the old man lit a single lantern. He would carry it to the edge of the road, hang it on the branch of a leaning tree, and return inside without a word. He did not greet the travelers. He did not ask their names. He did not offer food or comfort. He simply lit the way. No one asked him why. No one paid him for it. And yet for decades, the lantern had been there, glowing like a soft reminder that even in darkness, something could be trusted. The villagers often speculated about him. Some said he had once been a monk, withdrawn from the monastery after a great loss. Others said he had been a warrior, who, after taking too many lives, had chosen this silent service as penance. And some, quietly, said he had simply loved someone who never returned. But the Lantern Keeper never spoke of the past. He barely spoke at all. He walked with slow purpose, tended a small garden, and disappeared each morning into the woods, returning only as the light began to fall. One autumn, the sky brought storms. The rain was not violent, but persistent, falling day after day with a softness that soaked everything it touched. Travelers stopped coming. The road became mud. The trees bowed. And still, each night the old man lit the lantern. Then one evening, a young woman appeared on the path, soaked, shivering, barefoot. She stood beneath the tree and stared up at the light, as if unsure whether it was real. Her clothes were torn, her hands shook, her face was both old and young, the way sorrow makes a person older than their years and younger than their strength. The old man stood at his window, watching, and for the first time in many years, he stepped outside. He did not speak, he simply walked to the edge of the road and stood beside her. She did not look at him. Her gaze remained fixed on the lantern. Finally she whispered, "Why do you light it, if no one comes?" The old man looked at the lantern, then at her, and said only, "You came." She blinked. She looked down. She sat in the mud, and she began to cry. Not the cry of fear, not the cry of shame, but the cry that comes when something inside finally breaks open. Not to fall apart, but to spill out what has been held too long. The old man did not touch her. He did not comfort her. He sat, and they listened to the rain together. After some time the woman stood. She bowed. She said nothing. She walked on, and the old man remained. The next morning, he found a small flower left on his doorstep, a blue petal pressed between two stones. He smiled, and when night came again, he lit the lantern. In Buddhist teachings, this story is not about heroism. It is not about miracles. It is about quiet offering. It is about presence that expects nothing in return. It is about the truth that sometimes the most profound acts are the ones no one sees, no one celebrates, no one names. To light a lantern each night, not knowing if anyone will come. To place light where there is only the possibility of eyes to see it. This is the practice of compassion without attachment. Not doing to be thanked, not giving to be seen, just offering. Because the world is dark, and someone, somewhere, may be walking toward that light. You may never meet them. You may never know what pain they carry, but you can still light the lantern. And that might be enough. As you rest now, breathing in the soft rhythm of your body, you may think of your own lanterns, the small gestures you offer without applause, the kind words, the quiet forgiveness, the unseen patience. They matter, even when no one knows. Especially then, because in this world, we are all travelers. We all pass through shadow. We all search for light. And sometimes, the greatest gift we receive is the one we never asked for, the lantern we did not know we needed. And sometimes, we are the ones called to light it, not to save, but to be present, not to fix, but to remain. The story ends without answers. The lantern still swings. The rain still falls. And the old man continues to tend the flame, as do we, each in our own way, each in our own silence. And in that silence, something shines. In the heart of a dry and wind-swept desert, far from the chanting halls of temples and the soft bells of monasteries, there was a well. It was not marked on any map, nor known by many. But it existed, old and weathered, with stones worn smooth from the passing of hands and centuries. Travelers stumbled upon it by chance, and when they did, they often found more than water. By this well sat a man, not a monk, not a teacher, not a hermit, by declaration. He had no name that he offered, no lineage to cite, no robes to identify him, but he sat, every day beside the well, with eyes that seemed to look through sand and time. He never asked who people were. He never asked where they were going. He only asked one question, always the same. What are you still carrying? Some laughed, some frowned. Some offered confused answers, bags, water skins, coins, nothing. But the man would simply look back and wait, with a silence that made words feel heavy. One day, a warrior came to the well. His armor was beautiful, silver inlaid with gold, his sword wrapped in red silk, his boots polished even through the dust. But his eyes were tired. His shoulders sagged. He dismounted and knelt to drink. The water was cold, clear, more refreshing than he expected. He sighed. And then he saw the man. Their eyes met, and the man asked, "What are you still carrying?" The warrior hesitated. Then he spoke, softly, "Honor." The man said nothing. The warrior tried again. Memories. Still silence. He grew frustrated. "I've fought for peace. I've lost friends. I've done things I cannot name, for reasons I once believed in. Is that what you're asking?" The man only repeated, "What are you still carrying?" And this time the words hit something deeper. The warrior stared at his reflection in the water, and after a long time, he whispered, "Guilt." The man nodded, and the warrior wept, not loudly, not brokenly, but like someone who had carried something sharp in his chest for far too long. When his tears dried, he looked again at the man and asked, "How do I set it down?" The man pointed to the well. "Not in the water," he said, "but in the letting." And the warrior understood. He stood slowly, removed his sword, his armor, his symbols, piece by piece. He set them on the ground, not to be abandoned, not to be discarded, but to be honored and released. He bowed, and he walked on, lighter, unnamed, free. Another time, a woman came. She had no belongings, nothing but a wrapped cloth around her shoulders and eyes that never stopped searching. She approached the well and sat beside the man, uninvited but not unwelcome. She looked into the well, then finally asked, "What are you still holding?" The man smiled and nodded. She said, "Anger." And he replied, "Then your hands are full." She did not speak again, but in that silence, her jaw softened, her shoulders fell, and her breathing changed. She did not stay long. She did not cry. She simply placed a small rock beside the well and left. It is still there, as are many others, each a symbol, each a surrender. Not forced, but offered. In Buddhist teachings, we often speak of attachment, the ways we grip stories, roles, regrets, the way we confuse our burdens for our identity. This story, the well, the man, the question is not about erasing the past, it is about no longer being chained to it. What you carry may once have saved you, protected you, defined you, but the road ahead requires different hands. Hands open to receive, not clenched to remember. The well does not judge. It does not cleanse. It simply reflects. And sometimes reflection is enough to see clearly what is being held, and to decide if the weight is still necessary. As you lie here now, soft in breath, in body, in being, perhaps you too have something you've carried too far. A thought, a sorrow, a name, a story. And perhaps without needing to explain it or solve it, you can now ask yourself, what am I still carrying? And if your hands are tired, your chest heavy, your thoughts knotted, perhaps this is the moment you set it down. Not forever, not perfectly, just enough to feel the earth again beneath your feet, just enough to sleep. There is a well in you, still, silent, and beside it, a question, not to haunt, but to free. And in this stillness, your answer arrives, maybe not in words, but in the breath that follows, light, steady, free. The story fades, but the space it opened remains. And in that space you rest, you are, you let go. There are some stories that do not leave when they end. They remain, not as memory, but as atmosphere, subtle, persistent, like incense that lingers long after the flame has died. The story of the silent monk is one such story. It is not a tale of great drama. There are no miracles, no battles, no declarations of wisdom shouted from mountaintops. And yet, in its quiet unfolding, something shifts, something lands, not in the mind, but somewhere deeper. Even now, as your breath moves softly through you, you may still feel it, the echo of that silence. Not the absence of words, but the presence of something beyond them. A kind of gaze, a kind of knowing, that required no explanation to be understood. The monk spoke no doctrine, yet he taught with every still breath. He answered no question, yet offered clarity. His presence did not fill space, it revealed it. And in that space, others found their own answers. This is the paradox of the story, that one who says nothing can speak the loudest, that in not responding he offered a response far more powerful than any words could shape. Why is this story remembered? Why does it linger, long after the final sentence? Because it holds a mirror to something we rarely see, the noise within ourselves. The visitor who shouted his grief at the monk was not met with contradiction. He was met with space, and in that space, what was hidden beneath his anger emerged: guilt, regret, vulnerability. And the woman who begged for healing was not given a ritual. She was given her own breath, her own awareness, her own permission to feel. The monk did not teach them, he allowed them. And that is often the truest teaching. In Buddhist thought, the greatest truths are not inserted, they are revealed. They are not taught by adding, but by removing noise. Removing striving, removing the belief that every pain must be spoken in order to be felt. The monk's silence is not passive, it is precise. It is the silence of someone who no longer needs to convince the world of anything. The silence of someone who has tasted stillness and found it enough. And what does that reveal to us? Here, in this moment. It reminds us that perhaps we too have filled our minds with too many words, too many narratives. Too many responses rehearsed, repeated, defended, that maybe we are not lacking wisdom, but simply lacking space. The silent monk shows us a way, not a path of speech, but a path of stillness. Not a path of answers, but a path of deep listening. And that listening begins not with others, but with ourselves. What thoughts rise in you now? What words have you longed to say? But more importantly, what truths have you drowned in noise? Perhaps you are carrying questions that do not need answers. Perhaps you are holding wounds that cannot be solved through language. And perhaps what you truly seek is not advice, but presence. This story does not tell you what to do. It does not tell you who to be. It only asks that you sit beside your own stillness long enough for truth to arise. And so, let us do that now. Let us return, not to the details of the tale, but to the quiet it carried. Breathe, not as a practice, but as a return. Feel the weight of your body, the stillness of the room, the quiet of the space behind your thoughts. This is where the monk lived, not in some distant temple, but in this very stillness. And you too can live there, not always, not forever, but for this moment, right now. As you listen, as you rest, you may wonder what was the secret behind the monk's choice. But perhaps there was no secret. Perhaps there was only this: that silence is not a retreat from the world. It is a way of entering it more fully, with fewer walls, fewer weapons, fewer masks, and more presence, more humility, more truth. There is a reason the monk did not speak before his death. He had already said everything, not with his mouth, but with his being. And now that silence continues. Through you, through this breath, through this space, you are not asked to be silent forever. You are only invited to listen, now, to yourself, to what arises when there is no one left to impress, to what returns when effort ends. That is the gift of this story, not a moral, but a moment, a doorway into presence, into peace, into stillness. And if even a small part of you rests there tonight, then the story has done its work, and the silence has spoken again. There are stories that speak not to the calm, but to the chaos, not to the quiet parts of us, but to the restless ones, the places within where fear lingers, where uncertainty coils in the shadows. The story of the man and the strawberry is one such tale. It does not soothe immediately. It does not offer the soft light of resolution. Instead, it drops us into a moment we know all too well, a moment of being caught, of being trapped, of danger at our heels, and more waiting below, of clinging to something fragile, uncertain if it will hold. And yet, even there, even in that breathless in-between, there is something else. There is a strawberry, a simple fruit, growing in a place it should not. A moment of sweetness where only terror seems to belong. This story lingers because it refuses to look away from fear. It does not pretend the tigers are not real. It does not rescue the man. It does not change the ending. It simply points us toward the unexpected beauty that still exists inside the fear. And in doing so, it changes everything. In Buddhist thought, suffering is not a mistake. It is not a punishment. It is a condition of being awake in a world where everything changes. The man hanging from the root is not a metaphor for someone else. He is each of us in our own moment of collapse, our own precipice, our own desperation. But what the story reveals is that awareness does not need to wait for safety. That beauty does not vanish in danger. It simply becomes harder to see. That even when you are holding on by a thread, life can still offer you something perfect. Small, quiet, real. The strawberry is not a solution. It is not a savior. It is an invitation to taste the moment you are in. Not because it is safe, not because it is lasting, but because it is here. And in that act of tasting, of receiving what is given, just as it is, something deep shifts inside us. We stop waiting for later. We stop chasing peace as a place somewhere down the road. We begin instead to live. One bite, one breath, one moment at a time. You may find in your own life that the tigers are very real. They may take the shape of deadlines, illness, grief, memory. They may be waiting behind you. They may be gathering below. You may not know what to do next. And yet, even in that space, there is something to notice. Maybe a face, maybe a breeze, maybe the sound of your own breathing, still steady. Or maybe something you hadn't noticed at all, because fear had taken up so much space. The story asks us not to deny our fear, but to stop giving it the entire room. To make space for sweetness, even if only for a second. Even if only for a single bite. And in that bite, something opens. You see, the man in the story never escapes. He doesn't need to. Because escape was never the teaching. Awareness was, presence was, savoring was. And so, as you lie here now, soft and breathing, maybe the story is not about what happens to the man. Maybe it's about what happens to you. As you listen, as you remember your own cliff edges, as you sense the things you've clung to, and as you wonder, what strawberries have I overlooked? What sweetness have I ignored, because I was too busy trying to survive? And what would happen, right now, if I allowed even a tiny moment of joy to enter? Not to erase the fear, but to hold it more kindly, more spaciously. This story reminds us that the now is not a hallway to some better place. The now is the place. Even when it's hard. Especially when it's hard. The strawberry did not bloom, because the man was worthy. It did not appear to test him. It was already there. And when he noticed it, when he tasted it, he became present. And that was enough. That is what remains. Even after the story ends. Not the fall, not the roar, but the taste, and the choice to taste it. So let that question settle over you now, like mist across your thoughts. What are you holding on to so tightly that you've forgotten how to taste? And what would happen if just for this breath, you let go, just enough to notice what is sweet? There is no right answer, only this moment, this breath, this chance to live it fully. And if in this quiet hour, you find even a sliver of sweetness, then the story has done its work, and the strawberry is yours. Some stories do not speak in symbols, they become them. You hear them once, and something in their simplicity wraps itself around the root of your attention. Not with pressure, but with presence. The cup of tea is such a story. It begins with what seems like a contradiction, a student who has come not out of ignorance, but from knowledge. Not from confusion, but from certainty. And yet it is this very certainty that keeps him from seeing, from hearing, from receiving. That is why the story lingers. Not because of the tea, but because of what it reveals about how we carry our minds. The cup overflows, and in that simple act, the world shifts. The moment is almost absurd. But what makes it powerful is how true it feels, how familiar, how often we fill ourselves to the brim, with information, with preparation, with assumptions, and then wonder why the wisdom we seek has no place to land. In Buddhist teaching, the mind is not meant to be full. It is meant to be clear, to be open, to be like the surface of still water, reflective, not reactive. The student comes seeking truth, but his mind is already speaking so loudly that truth cannot be heard. The master does not respond with lectures or corrections. He simply pours. He lets the tea speak what words cannot. And in that moment, something in the student shifts. He begins to see himself, not as wise, but as filled. And that realization is the beginning of true learning. This story holds a mirror to all the ways we overfill ourselves with opinions, with expectations, with past experiences, with a relentless need to be right. And in doing so, we close the very door through which insight might have entered. To hear, we must quiet. To understand, we must release. To receive, we must empty. That is the paradox. The cup must be empty to be useful, not because emptiness is superior, but because space is necessary for anything new to arrive. And this is not only true for learning. It is true for peace, for love, for rest. If you are too full of noise, How will you hear your own breath? If you are too full of planning, how will you feel this moment? If you are too full of stories about who you are, what must happen, what you must protect, how will truth ever surprise you? This story is a reminder that stillness is not an absence of thinking. It is the condition for clear perception. And perception, in Buddhist understanding, is what shapes reality. Not what happens to you, but how you see it, how you meet it, and whether or not you have space for it. Even now, as you lie here, resting in the dark, you may begin to notice wherein you are things full. And are those things nourishing, or are they clutter? The story does not tell you to throw everything away. It only asks you to notice what no longer needs to be held. Perhaps it's a thought that keeps repeating. Perhaps it's an old belief, long unexamined. Perhaps it's simply the habit of trying too hard to find meaning, when meaning waits quietly beneath the surface. And so, we are invited, not to force silence, but to allow space, to soften the grasp, to tip the cup gently, and let a little spill, not in waste, but in trust. Because when space is made, something new can arise, something unexpected, something true. In many Zen teachings, the most profound insights come, not in words but in gestures. A bow, a breath, a teacup that overflows, not to embarrass, but to awaken. And that awakening is not dramatic. It is subtle, like the moment between the drop falling and the mind catching up. That space, that beat, is where the lesson lives, not in explanation, but in experience. So as you rest now, let this story settle not in your thoughts, but in your breath. Let it ask, without urgency, what might you release, just a little, to make room for peace? What might you put down, not forever, but for tonight? The lesson was not in escaping the tigers. It was in tasting what was already there. And perhaps as you remember that bite, something in you softens toward your own fears. Perhaps you too are clinging to a root, but now you remember to look around, to notice what sweetness still grows beside you. The third story spilled quietly. Like tea from a pot, it asked no deep question. It gave no clear answer. It simply poured, and in its pouring it showed us a truth so often missed, that we are already full of ideas, full of noise, full of the need to know. And in that fullness we have left no space for what truly nourishes. The master in the story gave the student no wisdom. He gave him a lesson, a moment, a reflection, one cup, too full to receive anything more. And in that spill we saw ourselves. How many times have you come to rest, still holding your stories, still trying to fit new peace into a space already occupied? This story invites you to pour a little out, to trust that emptiness is not loss, but readiness, to believe that space is sacred, and that what remains once we let go is where truth begins to rise. The fourth story lit a lantern, a single flame placed in the dark, without demand, without witness, and yet it became a lifeline for someone who didn't even know they were looking for one. The lantern keeper taught us not through belief, but through consistency. He reminded us that kindness does not always need a recipient, that presence does not always need applause, that to light the way, even if no one walks it, is an act of the deepest humanity. And perhaps you thought of your own lanterns as you heard it. The small ways you've shown up, the quiet ways you've remained. And perhaps now you feel the worth of those acts, even if no one ever told you. The lantern still burns, so does yours. And finally we arrived at the well, still, open, and waiting. A story that asked only a question: what are you still carrying? And in that question, 1,000 truths emerged, not spoken, not forced, just gently revealed. The well did not heal, it allowed. It gave people the space to name what had long been unnamed, and in that naming, they found the beginning of release. Maybe you found your own burden rising as you listened. Maybe you did not. But the question remains, not to pressure, not to accuse, only to remind you you are allowed to set things down. You are allowed to be lighter. You are allowed to rest. Each of these stories brought a different note: silence, savoring, surrender, offering, release. But beneath them all was a single thread: presence. The monk was present even in silence. The traveler was present even in fear. The master was present even without words. The lantern keeper was present even without company. The man at the well was present even without purpose. And so now you are invited into the same presence, not perfection, not understanding, just this breath, just this moment. The stories have done their part. Now let them rest in you. Like seeds that need no tending, only stillness. You need not hold them. They will hold you, and in the quiet that follows, they will begin to bloom. In your sleep, in your dreams, in your days to come. Because these stories do not end here. They continue in the way you speak, the way you listen, the way you taste, the way you offer light, the way you release. So as you lie here now, soft in the rhythm of rest, know this: you are not alone. You are not broken. You are not late. You are simply here, and that is enough. The stories have entered. The silence has returned, and you are ready to let go, to rest, to sleep. Now that the stories have been told, and the echoes of their wisdom have gently settled around you like dust in a temple at dusk, it is time to turn inward again. Not to think, not to remember, but to rest. You have been listening with your heart open, your breath steady, your mind softened, and now your body is ready to follow. It has held you through the journey. It has supported every breath, every pause, every flicker of awareness. And now it asks only for one thing: release. We begin, not by doing anything, but by noticing. Notice the stillness. Notice the breath. Notice the ground that holds you, effortlessly, completely, without asking anything in return. There is no posture to maintain now, no need to adjust. Your body is already enough. Let your awareness move to your feet, not to judge, just to feel. Notice the weight of your heels, the shape of your toes. Notice whether your feet are warm or cool, tense or soft, and then let go. Imagine the feet growing heavier, sinking into the earth, not in fear, but in trust. The earth is strong. It can hold you. Now bring your attention to your legs, from ankles to knees to thighs. You may feel a subtle vibration there, or nothing at all. Both are fine. This is not about feeling the right thing. It is about presence. Now allow the legs to soften. Imagine the muscles unwinding, the joints loosening, the bones resting. They have carried you far. They deserve peace. Now to the hips. This is where so much is held. Tension, emotion, the remnants of days gone by. You do not need to name them. You only need to breathe into them. On the next exhale, allow the hips to release, not to collapse, just to be held. Let the pelvis settle into gravity. Let the breath drop deeper into the belly, soft, slow, unforced. Now the spine, so often it bears the invisible weight of everything we try to hold together. Let it lengthen just slightly with each breath in, and fall gently with each breath out, not stretching, just floating, like seaweed drifting in a gentle tide. Now the hands, open them. If only in your awareness, uncurl the fingers, let go of what they've gripped all day. Let them fall towards stillness. They've done enough. Now the arms, from wrist to elbows to shoulders, let them be heavy. Let them surrender. The shoulders, especially, let them drop. They've carried the weight of so many unspoken burdens. There is nothing left to lift tonight. Let them fall. Let the chest soften. Let the heart rest. It has felt so much. It does not need to work harder to be heard. Its rhythm is enough. Now the neck, the jaw, the tongue, all the small muscles that have held back what couldn't be said, or tried too hard to say what needed no words. Let them melt. Let the jaw be loose. The lips part just slightly. No effort, just breath. Now the eyes, even if closed, let them rest deeper, as if turning inward, not to see but to be. The forehead smooths. The scalp releases. Even the skin softens. You are not just lying down. You are being held by the earth, by the silence, by this breath. Feel it again. Inhale through the nose, as if you are being breathed, and then exhale, as if you are letting go of the whole day. Again, inhale without pulling, exhale without pushing. Breath as offering, breath as surrender. Now let the breath fall into its own rhythm. You don't need to watch it. You don't need to shape it. It knows the way, just as the tide knows when to rise, just as the flame knows how to flicker. The stories have carried you here, but now there are no more words to follow, no more lessons to hold, only this breath, only this moment. And in this moment, you are safe. You are seen. You are allowed to stop holding. Stop planning. Stop planning. Stop remembering. Just rest. There is no need to prove anything. There is nothing more to achieve tonight. This breath is enough. This stillness is enough. You are enough. And as you lie here, wrapped in the quiet that follows release, the body becomes the story. The body becomes the temple. The body becomes the silence. Let it speak, not in language, but in stillness. Let it breathe. Let it drift. You do not need to sleep. You do not need to stay awake. You only need to surrender. The breath will carry you. The earth will hold you. The night will protect you. You are not falling asleep. You are returning to the place beneath all noise, to the place behind all thought, to the space where stillness is not empty, but full of life, full of peace, full of you. You are here, and here is more than enough. Now rest. Everything else can wait. There is a quiet that follows release, a hush that comes not from silence, but from having nothing left to carry, nothing more to explain, nothing more to become. You have arrived at that quiet, now not as a destination, but as a returning, to the part of you that never needed to try so hard, to the part of you that already knew how to rest. It has been waiting, patiently, kindly, and now it welcomes you back. There is nothing more to do, only to be, to lie in this moment as you are, without tension, without effort, without story. Your breath moves not like a task, but like a lullaby. The body has softened into stillness. The mind has loosened its grip. The heart no longer needs to guard itself. You are safe, and in this safety, something beautiful happens. Gratitude arises, not because you were told to feel it, but because stillness makes space for it. Gratitude not for something dramatic, not for something rare, but for this breath, this body, this night, this quiet company of your own presence. There is peace in knowing that you can rest without earning it. There is peace in remembering that you do not need to be anything other than what you are right now. The stories that came to you tonight were not meant to change you. They were meant to remind you that silence has power, that presence is healing, that letting go is holy, that offering light without knowing who will see it is an act of love, and that asking yourself, softly and without pressure, what you are still carrying can be the beginning of freedom. You walked through each of these truths with openness, with curiosity, with courage. Even if your body did not move, your being did. And now at the end of this journey, there is no final message, no grand conclusion, only this: thank you. Thank you for listening. Thank you for allowing these words into your night. Thank you for breathing, even when it felt hard. Thank you for choosing stillness, even when the world urges noise. Thank you for remembering, in your own way, what peace feels like. This gratitude does not come from obligation. It comes from presence, from knowing that somewhere in this vast world you are here, lying still, breathing gently, part of a lineage of listeners, part of a quiet revolution that begins not in shouts but in softening. The world may never know that you took this time for yourself, but you will, your body will, your breath will, and that knowing will shape the way you rise tomorrow. Not louder, not faster, but clearer, softer, more whole. There is nothing more to fix tonight, nothing more to solve. You have honored yourself simply by being, by receiving, by trusting that it is okay to rest. If sleep has come, let it deepen. If you are still awake, let that be welcome too. This is not about reaching sleep. It is about releasing the idea that you must reach anything. You are not separate from peace. You are not behind. You are not late. You are here, exactly where you are meant to be. And that is enough. Let this final breath, this next inhale, be a gesture of thanks, not to me, not to the stories, but to yourself, to your breath, to this moment, to the quiet, to the earth beneath you that holds everything you no longer need to carry, and to the air around you that asks for nothing but your presence. The stories now rest, the night continues, and you are free to float. No effort, no urgency, only the soft, steady unfolding of rest. Let the breath become background. Let the stillness widen. Let the gratitude remain, not as a feeling, but as a way of being. Thank you. Now drift. Now dissolve. Now sleep. Some moments arrive not to awaken you, but to bless the space just before sleep. This is one of those moments. It carries no task, no voice raised above a whisper. It does not ask you to remember. It asks only that you remain here, as you are, without resistance, without need. There is no longer a story to follow, only the rhythm of your breath, only the stillness around you that now feels like a second skin, soft, safe, sacred. The night has grown quieter, not just outside, but within. The thoughts have slowed their turning. The muscles have released their memory of holding. The body is no longer waiting. It has arrived, and in this space, there is only one direction: inward. You are no longer being spoken to. You are being accompanied, like sitting beside a fire that needs no tending, like walking beneath stars that expect nothing from you, like floating on waters that have no shore and no end. The stillness does not require your focus now. It has become part of you, not something you observe, but something you are. The edges between self and space have softened. The boundary between breath and world has thinned. There is nothing left to figure out, no past to organize, no future to prepare for. Even the stories you heard are no longer thoughts. They have become a gentle atmosphere, surrounding you, holding you, like mist in the branches of memory. They do not need your attention anymore. They are complete. And so are you. You are not waiting for sleep to begin. Sleep is already here. It arrived when your body stopped asking for permission. It arrived when your breath began to deepen without your help. It arrived when you stopped reaching and began receiving. There is a light still with you now, not the kind you see, but the kind you feel. A soft glow at the center of being. It needs no fuel. It needs no flame. It simply is, like presence, like awareness, like rest. Let that light expand, without force. Let it glow across your chest. Let it move behind your eyes. Let it wrap around your fingers, your spine, your breath. Let it fill the spaces you once filled with effort. And let it do what light does. Illuminate without asking. Warm without burning. Be without needing to be noticed. In Buddhist understanding, this is the nature of awakened presence. Not a prize, not an achievement, just the simple realization that you are, and that being is enough. There is nothing to improve here, nothing to do better next time. There is no next time right now. There is only now, and now is infinite. The thoughts may still rise, like birds startled from a field, but you no longer follow them. You watch them fly, and they pass. You are not the thoughts. You are the sky they pass through. Wide open, untouched. Let this awareness hold you now. Let the weight of sleep come not as an interruption, but as a deepening, a falling not down, but inward, toward peace, toward softness, toward home. You have walked through teachings older than time. You have listened not just with ears, but with your entire being. And in that listening, something has shifted, even if you cannot name it. Even if you don't remember it in the morning, it will remain, as stillness, as breath, as a lighter step in a heavier world. And now all that remains is to rest. There are no more words to receive. Only silence, only breath, only you, hold present, held. So let yourself dissolve, like fog beneath the sun, like waves returning to the ocean, like a story that becomes a dream, and a dream that becomes sleep. Nothing more is needed. Sleep deeply now. You are ready, you are safe, you are home. There is a moment beyond words, beyond teachings, beyond stories, where even the quiet voice that has accompanied you all this time begins to fade, not from absence, but from fulfillment. You are already resting, even if the mind still offers a flicker of thought, even if your body still feels the faint edges of awareness. You are drifting, like mist that no longer clings to form, like a candle that continues to warm even after the flame is gone. What remains now is not guidance, not even reflection, but the rhythm of being, a low tide of breath, a hush of awareness, a softness beyond sleep. And into that softness sounds begin to rise, not in the world outside, but within the space where your thoughts once echoed. They are not sounds to follow, not melodies to interpret, only textures, movements, the breath of night through trees you cannot see, a windless hush settling across the surface of water that never needed a name. Perhaps you hear the faint tones of bells, not rung by hand, not made of metal, but sounded from within the silence itself, like reminders that even in the stillest places, something continues to breathe, something continues to hold you. You are no longer listening with your ears. You are listening with your breath, with your skin, with the space behind your closed eyes. And what you hear is not noise. It is presence. It is the world exhaling, not as ending, but as welcome. In Buddhist monasteries, the deepest meditations end, not with a sound, but with the absence of sound. Because in that absence, truth continues, without needing to be spoken, without needing to be understood. That is where you are now, in the space after the stories, after the teachings, after the thoughts. There is nothing to hold here, only to be held, by the air, by the stillness, by the pulse of your own heart slowing into surrender. If you were to listen closely now, not with your ears, but with the softness of your resting body, you might feel the gentle echo of each story returning, not as memory, but as rhythm. The silence of the monk, now the silence of your own breath. The strawberry's sweetness, now the sweetness of this stillness. The cup now empty, holding only sleep. The lantern's glow, now the warmth in your chest. The well, now the depth in which your dreams will float. And above it all, the sound of nothing, of rest, of peace that no longer needs a name. This final space does not close the journey. It opens it into the part of you that no longer needs to be guided. The part of you that remembers, without thinking, how to let go. So now, let the breath become barely there. Let the body dissolve into the surface beneath it. Let the thoughts scatter like dust in late light. Let the sound recede, like waves you no longer chase. And let the night do what it does best, hold you. You will sleep now, not because the voice has told you to, but because everything else has fallen away. And what remains is rest, pure, unshaped, unspoken. You are not falling asleep. You have already arrived. Stay float, disappear. Everything is still here, and everything is at peace. There is a sleep that arrives not with weight, but with lightness. Not as a shutting down, but as an unfolding. It does not crash through the gates of your thoughts. It glides past them, quiet, soft, certain. You are on the threshold of that sleep, now. Not because you have chased it, but because you have stopped running. You have heard the stories. You have rested in the space between each breath. You have opened the hand that was once so tightly closed. Now there is nothing more to hold, nothing more to grasp, only the gentle descent, the final letting go. Sleep is not an escape. It is not the opposite of life. It is life, in its gentlest form. It is the moment when life holds you, without asking you to perform, without asking you to remember your role, or your name, or your goals. Sleep does not need you to explain yourself. It needs only your permission, and perhaps tonight, you are ready to give it. Not as surrender, but as return. Return to the rhythm that was always beneath the effort. Return to the body that has longed for stillness. Return to the place inside you that already knows how to rest. There is nothing you must do now. No breath to control. No posture to hold. No thought to resolve. Even awareness is beginning to dissolve, like sand slipping between fingers, no longer needing to be counted. You are not drifting into darkness. You are drifting into depth, into softness, into the place where you are not a name, or a history, or a task list, but a being, whole held, safe. Perhaps you are already between two places, not quite waking, not quite dreaming. This space is sacred. Here, time slows. Here the breath no longer marks minutes, it marks eternity. Here the stories do not speak, but echo softly in your cells. A monk's silence, a strawberry's sweetness, a teacup's emptiness, a lantern's glow, a question beside a well. Each one has done its work. Each one has left a light within you. And now, you lie bathed in that light, not to shine, but to rest. You may not feel sleep arrive. It may not announce itself. It may simply gather around you like fog on still water. You may not know the moment it comes, but when it does, it will come fully. It will carry you without asking. It will wrap itself around you with the same softness that shaped these stories. There is no more need for words, only breath, only this, and you are here, exactly here. The breath is softer now, slower, like a lullaby, with no melody, no end. The body is weightless, or perhaps more grounded than ever. Either way, it no longer asks for control. It only asks to be. There is no one to impress now, no one to become. You are complete in this pause. You are complete in this breath. You are complete in this night. Let that truth rest in your chest. Let it glow behind your eyes. Let it become the air around you, the space within you. Nothing more is coming. Everything has arrived. And now, sleep comes not as a stranger, but as something you have known all along. Something ancient, something kind, something quiet. Let it hold you. Let it rock you. Let it become the sea on which your dreams drift, gentle and wide. You are not falling. You are not leaving. You are simply sinking into being, where breath is enough, where peace is not the absence of thought, but the absence of pressure. You are not behind. You are not broken. You are not waiting. You are here. And here is home. Here is rest. Here is sleep. And sleep is ready. There is a rhythm beneath all things. It is not hurried. It is not loud. It is the rhythm of breath. The same breath that moved through the monk's stillness. The same breath that held steady as the man dangled above the void. The same breath that lifted steam from the teacup. The same breath that flickered in the lantern. The same breath that echoed inside the question at the well. It is the breath that moves through you now, not separate from the stories, but one with them. You are not watching the breath anymore. You are breathing it. You are not shaping the breath anymore. It is breathing you. And in that, there is peace. Let this next inhale be an arrival. Gentle, slow, effortless. Let it rise like mist, lifting from the earth, light, barely there. And now, exhale, even slower, even softer. Let it fall like leaves in the last light of evening. Let each breath dissolve more of the day. Let each breath draw you closer to stillness. There is nothing you must do with this breath. No goal, no structure, only the rhythm. Let it be slow. Let it be shallow. Let it be like waves that do not crash, but sway. You are not chasing calm. You are allowing it. You are not waiting for sleep. You are remembering how to rest. And the body remembers. The body has always remembered. Let your feet feel even heavier now. So relaxed, they disappear into the space below. Let the legs be weightless, as if floating in warm water. Let the hips fall, spreading softly into the earth. Let the belly rise and fall, like the surface of a pond. Let the hands be open. Let the chest be warm. Let the shoulders release one final sigh. Let the throat soften. Let the face be smooth and still. Let the mind drift. Let the breath return again. Inhale, quietly. as if through the pores. Exhale, longer than you think you need. Each breath a soft erasure of sound, of time, of thought, of self, until only presence remains. No need to adjust anymore. No need to listen. The voice that brought you here is fading, not out of absence, but out of completion. There is nothing left to say, only this breath, and now another, and now nothing more. Only you, only this, only sleep. And you are ready, you are ready, you are ready, you are already there. What remains now is not the voice. It is the echo after the voice. It is not the breath. It is the stillness between the breath. It is not the thought. It is the space where thought does not need to arise. This moment is not a moment of doing. It is a moment of being. And then, even beyond being, just peace. There is no more narration here. There is no more need for narrative. What was said has dissolved. What was heard has softened into warmth. And what stays is what was always here before the words came. Presence. And in that presence, sleep blooms. Not as a flower to admire, but as darkness that holds. As night that sings. As a tide that takes you home. You may not hear what comes next. You may not even know you are still listening. But you are. Because the body listens even when the ears no longer try. The heart listens in ways the mind cannot name. And what it hears now is quiet. What it feels now is rest. Sleep does not require sound. It does not require thought. It does not require understanding. It only requires space. And here, you have made that space. By softening, by receiving, by being willing to be still. What comes next is not guided. It is natural. Like water running downhill. Like wind cooling stone. Like dreams arriving on currents you did not need to summon. So let the voice fade now. Not abruptly, but gently. Like the slow dimming of light through closed eyelids. Like the weight of a blanket being pulled to your shoulders. Let everything fall away. The teachings, the stories, the images, the breath, even the idea of sleep. Let it all fall. There is nothing left to carry. You are free, and the body knows what to do with freedom. It rests, it heals, it sleeps. You are not falling asleep anymore. You have already fallen, softly, lovingly. You have arrived, where you no longer need to be anything, no longer need to try. You are here, in the final hush, where no words are needed, and none will follow. You are whole, you are safe, you are loved. Now sleep. There is no more need to listen, no more need to hold on. Even the breath is a whisper now, barely sensed, barely there. You have entered the space beneath the story, the silence beneath the breath, the stillness beneath awareness. This is where words no longer follow. This is where even the idea of sleep has fallen away, like smoke curling into the night. Nothing remains but presence. Not the kind you perform, not the kind you direct, but the kind that simply is. This presence is not yours alone. It is not located in the chest, not centered in the body. It is everywhere. It is the presence of the night itself. The presence of time standing still. The presence of everything you've ever been. Letting go. No thoughts now. Even they have grown weary. They no longer try to form. They no longer call for your attention. They too are sleeping. The breath is no longer counted. It is no longer deep or shallow. It simply is. No effort remains. Not even the effort to sleep. The body is no longer something separate from the bed beneath it. It has merged. The space between you and everything has vanished. You are no longer the one being held. You are the holding. You are the darkness that wraps itself around the world, not to cover it but to comfort it. You are not disappearing. You have simply stopped needing to appear. There is nothing now. No image, no idea, no voice. Even this voice is retreating, step by step, word by word. Soon not even it will remain, not because it is lost, but because you no longer need it. What it came to bring you, it has delivered. What it came to remind you, you already knew. Now it vanishes, gently, quietly. It becomes silence. And in that silence you do not wait. You rest. You do not try. You are not awake, not dreaming, not separate. You have passed through every layer. You have reached the deepest well, and it is full of stillness, full of peace. Not the peace of answers, but the peace of no more questions. Let everything go. Now, let even this voice go. It is already fading, and soon it will be gone, and you will still be here, as quiet, as night, as rest, forever. There is a breath you will take that does not need to return. It is not the end. It is not even the beginning. It is simply the letting go, the final movement before stillness becomes all that remains. You have walked far, not in distance, but in depth. You have peeled away the sound of voices, the shape of thoughts, the weight of effort. And now what remains is not even you. Not the you that asked questions. Not the you that reached for rest. Not the you that listened. All of those layers have fallen like leaves in a windless forest. What remains is presence without form. A space where not even silence needs a listener. A space so deep that time itself slows to stillness. In this space, there is no memory, no future, no sleep, no waking, no self. There is only what is, a hum without sound, a light without glow, a breath that is not breath, but being. You are beyond comfort now, beyond relaxation, beyond awareness. You are in the sacred emptiness from which all peace is born. Even the body, that faithful companion, is now only suggestion. It does not ache, it does not hold. It simply floats. The breath continues, but no longer as a rhythm, more like a shimmer across a still pond, a vibration in the dark. Even this voice, now, is almost gone. You do not need it, not anymore. You have passed the gate of sound, of story, of breath. You have entered the final hush, where the world ends not with noise, but with peace. And in this peace there is no boundary. You are not here. You are not elsewhere. You are simply nowhere. And it is beautiful. Nothing hurts here. Nothing lingers. Nothing waits. You are not falling asleep. You have fallen. You are not seeking dreams. You have become the dream. You are not resting. You are rest itself. There is no more to say, no more to think, no more to know. The breath fades, the light fades, the voice fades, and you remain, as silence, as sleep, as the final word, unspoken, as the final moment, unmeasured, as the final truth, untouched, unneeded, unmade. Good night.